Listen up, network defenders. I'm issuing a critical Code Ninja security advisory today, and honestly, we need to dive into this right now. Your perimeter? It might not be as secure as you think it is. We're looking at a high-stakes reality here with Fortinet's FortiOS. Look, if you recently applied a security patch thinking you'd successfully locked out an adversary, you need to hear this. That exact remediation effort is fundamentally flawed. We're breaking down CVE 2025-6868. It's an information disclosure vulnerability that's literally leaving enterprise networks exposed as we speak. My goal with this explainer is to practice coordinated vulnerability disclosure, giving you the immediate, actionable intel you need to force fixes and protect your perimeter before threat actors dig in any deeper.
And let me make one thing crystal clear right off the bat. This is absolutely not some theoretical lab exercise. No way. This threat is actively being exploited out in the wild. As of July 27, 2026, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, officially updated their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog to include this specific FortiOS flaw. They shifted the classification from exploitation none straight to exploitation active. You know what that means? When CISA elevates a CVE to the KEV catalog, the clock starts ticking for federal networks. And frankly, it should be ticking for yours too. We're dealing with active adversaries leveraging this flaw to breach enterprise systems right now.
Now here's the deep irony and the real danger of this whole situation. Think about this. When a security patch meant to eliminate adversary persistence itself contains a flaw, cleanup efforts offer a dangerous false sense of security. That perfectly sums up CVE 2025-6886. See, Fortinet had previously identified symlink persistency mechanisms that attackers were using in post-exploit scenarios, so they issued a patch to clean it up. Makes sense, right? But that cleanup patch failed to properly handle crafted HTTP requests sent to the web management components. And you better believe threat actors know this. They're bypassing those previous remediation efforts, slipping right past the patch, and maintaining unauthorized access to extract your sensitive enterprise data.
The disclosure timeline really shows you exactly how fast this escalated. Let's walk through it. On February 10, 2026, this zero-day was officially published to the National Vulnerability Database by Fortinet. Just 3 days later, SentinelOne drops their detailed threat intelligence, outlining the attack vectors and how the patch bypass actually works. But the real escalation? That hits in the summer. On July 27, CISA flags the active exploitation and slaps it onto the KV catalog. And that brings us to August 10, 2026, the absolute mandatory mitigation deadline for federal civilian networks under Binding Operational Directive 22-01. If you're subject to federal guidelines, you've got a hard stop right there.
So, let's just pause for a brief operational security check. Are your comms secure? We're about to pivot into the deep technical mechanics of this vulnerability. And let's face it, in our line of work, receiving reliable, timely threat intelligence is literally the difference between an attempted breach and a catastrophic data loss.
Consider this your formalized communication link setup. I need you to subscribe to CyberTech 79 and enable all notifications. Think of it as a strict security necessity for your real-time intelligence feeds. And go ahead and hit that like button for me. I treat that as an ACK, an acknowledgement of receipt. It confirms that this critical perimeter intelligence has successfully reached your Security Operations Center. Got it? Awesome. Moving right along to the blast radius, where we'll be defining the impact and the threat model. The core classification of this flaw is CWE 200, exposure of sensitive information to an unauthorized actor. Essentially, the application unintentionally reveals sensitive data. In the context of our FortiOS appliances, it basically means that the patch designed to stop symbolic link persistence was incomplete. It totally fails when a remote, unauthenticated attacker sends specially crafted HTTP requests directly to the web management daemon. The crazy part? The attacker doesn't need privileges and they don't need any user interaction. They just need network access to those administrative interfaces to bypass the intended access controls. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the nuance in risk scoring. You're looking at a 5.9. That's the CVSS version 3.1 base score. Now you might see 5.9, medium, and think, oh, I'll just toss that to the bottom of the pile. Do not make that mistake. The score is medium only because the attack complexity is rated high, due to a very specific prerequisite we'll cover in just a second. But look closely at the impact profile. The confidentiality impact is absolute and high. It allows unauthorized extraction of sensitive system data across network interfaces. If the attacker meets the prerequisites, well, they own your data. Simple as that. To really understand the threat model here, we have to distinguish between initial and secondary access. Item 1 is initial compromise. This flaw actually cannot achieve initial access on a factory-clean system.
The attacker must already have compromised the FortiOS device at the file system level through a totally separate primary vulnerability. Item 2 is secondary exploitation. That's exactly what CVE 2025-68686 is. It's a secondary exploit. The attacker uses it to bypass your subsequent patching efforts and retain their access via HTTP. So they're already inside the perimeter. It's like you thought you locked the front door, but they were already hiding in the closet and found a new way to peek through the keyhole. To ensure every single administrator understands exactly how this adversary operates, let's map out the precise 4-step exploitation chain. Step 1. The adversary gets in via that initial compromise we just talked about. Step 2. They establish file system-level access and place symbolic links to create a persistence hook. Now you run your incident response, you apply the vendor patch, and you think you're safe. But then comes Step 3, the HTTP bypass payload. The adversary sends crafted requests to your web daemon, exploiting the flaw in the patch itself. Which leads right into Step 4, data disclosure. They completely bypass the security boundary restrictions and extract your sensitive configuration data right under your nose.
All right, let's jump into the emergency patch protocol, covering actionable mitigation and threat triage.
I'm instructing all defenders watching this explainer right now to screenshot this firmware patching matrix immediately. Go ahead, grab a screenshot. This vulnerability affects a broad array of enterprise legacy and modern releases. If you're on the 7.6 branch, version 7.6.0 and 7.6.1 are vulnerable. You absolutely must upgrade to 7.62 or higher. For the 7.4 branch, version 7.4.0 through 7.4.6 are affected. Push that to 7.4.7 or higher. And if you're running any version of 7.2, 7.0, or 6.4, you need to consult the FortiGuard Incident Response Advisory, that's FG-IR 25-934 immediately. I really cannot stress this enough, guys. Partial or incremental fixes will not neutralize this bypass. You need fully patched firmware versions.
But here's the kicker. Updating the firmware is only half the battle. Because this exploit relies on prior system access, standard patching just is not enough. You have got to hunt for latent threats. Operations teams must look for these specific indicators of compromise. Are you seeing unusual or unauthorized symbolic links in your FortiOS file system, especially around those web server components? Are there anomalous HTTP request patterns targeting internal administrative interfaces? You should also definitely be checking for historical evidence of rootkit activity or irregular file access logs that might indicate unauthorized bulk retrieval. Do your forensic triage before you assume a patch magically makes you safe.
Now, if you can't patch immediately, or if you're actively conducting those forensic reviews, here is your uncompromising tactical directive. Restrict your management interfaces using strict access control lists. Never, and I mean under absolutely no circumstances, expose these administrative web interfaces to the public internet. If mitigations or patches cannot be safely verified, those exposed appliances must be isolated or disconnected via network segmentation. You need to reduce your attack surface immediately.
Taking a step back for a second, this really brings us to the core of what we do as security researchers. Users need to know to protect their systems. Coordinated vulnerability disclosure is absolutely essential. Exposing these post-exploitation bypass mechanisms publicly is sometimes the only way to force vendors to issue comprehensive fixes. It ensures that global network defense operations have the actionable intelligence they actually need. We cannot rely on security by obscurity, especially when we are dealing with active, in-the-wild exploitation. It just doesn't work.
Ultimately, your perimeter is only as strong as your vigilance and your willingness to thoroughly investigate even the systems you thought were totally clean. Follow those CISA mandates, update your firmware, and hunt down those IOCs. But this whole situation leaves us with a pretty chilling question. If the patches meant to save us are fundamentally broken, what other remediated vulnerabilities are adversaries silently exploiting in your network right now? Stay vigilant, stay informed, and most importantly, stay secure.